My deskmate is the school's infamous cold beauty, the most aloof and untouchable girl. Her personality is fierce, and she never looks at anyone directly on normal days. For the 2.5 years I sat next to her, I could only be extra careful, afraid to provoke this goddess. That day after school, I had to return to school for a matter. The classroom, which should have been empty, was instead filled with the most unruly students in the school, and there, sitting in the middle, was my cold deskmate Meng Yao. Looking quite smug, she said with pride, "What's there to show off? My family's Lin Bei is the most handsome." I stood at the door, too scared to breathe, too afraid to interrupt her boasting. Because I am Lin Bei. Normally, I arrive early at the classroom every morning, hoping to finish my breakfast before Meng Yao arrives. When she's around, I don't even dare to speak loudly, let alone eat breakfast. Meng Yao excels academically, comes from a prestigious family, and has a face so beautiful it's hard to look away. But her cold persona precedes her. In the 2 years sitting next to her, she has hardly ever looked at me properly. Whenever someone asks me to deliver love letters to her, she pauses, her eyes colder than ice. She taps her fingers against the desk, as if warning me, "Try it and see." And she seems to have obsessive-compulsive tendencies. Her desk is so impeccably neat. It's even more organized than mine, and I'm a guy. She gives off the air of a goddess, as if she exists in a world far above ours. Her presence radiates a disdain for all of us mere mortals. In short, I wouldn't dare say more than a word in front of her. That day, while Meng Yao hadn't arrived yet, I hurriedly took out an egg to eat. I had just finished peeling the shell. When I took a bite, suddenly I felt someone lightly kick my chair. Right after that, I heard a familiar voice filled with coldness from above. I instinctively looked up, with half a mouthful of egg still in my mouth. There, standing beside me, was Meng Yao, her hands in her pockets. With an expressionless face, she was standing outside, waiting for me to let her in. In a panic, I stood up, wanting her to go in quickly, not daring to let her wait too long. But the egg in my mouth hadn't gone down, and it got stuck. I pounded my chest, feeling uncomfortable. Meng Yao's expression remained unchanged, but she casually reached out and opened her thermos, passing it to me. I didn't think too much about it. Instinctively, I took the cup and drank a sip, trying to wash down the egg. After all, the thought of choking on an egg was embarrassing enough to even imagine. At that moment, I heard Meng Yao's voice near my ear. "How can you choke on a simple egg?" "Oh no!" She's disgusted by me. I carefully looked at her and explained. "I was worried you'd wait too long, so I ate a bit too hastily." Meng Yao furrowed her brows. That's when I suddenly realized, I think I just drank from Meng Yao's thermos. This is bad. How could I drink from someone else's thermos? I bit my lip, unsure of how to apologize. Seeing Meng Yao still standing there waiting for me to move, I hurriedly stepped aside. Meng Yao didn't say a word. She just walked in and sat down, and I stood beside her, nervously wiping the thermos over and over again. "Do you dislike me?" Meng Yao suddenly spoke, startling me. "No, no!" Quickly waved my hands. "I just wanted to clean it for you. I really didn't mean to dislike you." Meng Yao didn't speak. She just quietly looked at me. As expected, she was still as cold and distant as ever. I clutched the thermos, not knowing what to do for a moment. I steeled myself and handed the thermos to her. "Meng Yao, do you still want it?" I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, but Meng Yao's gaze seemed to pause on the thermos for a few seconds, her eyes deep and contemplative. After quite a while, she softly said, "No need to return it." She said it and didn't pay me any more attention. Instead, she began flipping through a thick physics book. I glanced at the cover and secretly marveled inside. Meng Yao is really impressive. She's already studying university-level physics, while I'm still lost in high school physics. Meng Yao, I'm really sorry today. Don't worry. I'll buy you a new thermos. Meng Yao didn't even lift her head, coldly spitting out two words. No need. I stood there feeling regretful. This is bad. I've definitely offended this big shot terribly. The next week, I spent it in constant anxiety. I didn't dare to give her the new thermos I bought, but it seemed like Meng Yao didn't take this matter to heart. Her attitude towards me was still the same as usual. She didn't talk to me much. I nervously made it through the week. On the weekend, my phone suddenly popped up with a message. It was from my friend Gu Wuyan. Lin Bei, emergency, help me out. Are you free this weekend? Can you help me draw a display board for the school's publicity department? I have a fever. I really can't make it. Please, I beg you. I thought for a moment while holding my phone. I'm fairly good at drawing, so I quickly replied to him. All right, take care of your health. I'll handle the display board. The weather was especially nice that day. The sunlight was gentle, not blinding. The school was unusually quiet on the weekend. A light breeze passed through the leaves, making a rustling sound. It sounded so pleasant, it lifted my spirits. I walked toward the classroom with my backpack, thinking today was Saturday, and the classroom would be empty. I could safely finish my draft in peace. But as I reached the door, I found the classroom, which should have been empty, was filled with the students who usually give the teachers headaches. They seemed to be discussing which celebrity was the most handsome. I knew most of them were wealthy, and seeing celebrities was nothing out of the ordinary for them. It was a common occurrence at family banquets. My cold deskmate, Meng Yao, was sitting right in the middle. She had a smug look on her face. What's there to show off? None of them are as handsome as my Lin Bei. I stood at the door, not daring to breathe. Because I am Lin Bei. A girl asked her. Meng Yao, Lin Bei is your deskmate, right? Meng Yao, lounging lazily with her legs crossed, replied, Yes, my deskmate is really well behaved. At that moment, Meng Yao was completely different from how I usually saw her. If it weren't for that face, I doubt this was even the same person. Suddenly, a girl caught my eye. She gave a mischievous grin and jokingly asked Meng Yao, The Lin Bei you're talking about, is he around 1.8 meters tall? Does he carry a brownish backpack? Meng Yao's face showed pride, and she looked even more pleased. Yes, he looks especially well behaved. As she said that, it seemed like she remembered something. She gave that girl a little kick. How do you know that? I warn you. You better not have any improper thoughts. The girl smiled and dodged the kick, then raised her hand to point toward the door. I wouldn't dare have any thoughts about you, miss. But Meng Yao, I just met the legendary Lin Bei. Meng Yao looked indifferent. How? Is he going to stand at the door or something? The girl laughed even more happily. Maybe. Meng Yao's body froze for a moment. She slowly put down her legs. Then she turned around. I didn't have time to hide, and we locked eyes. The moment felt heavy. The classroom was eerily silent. 1 second, 2 seconds. Everyone quietly watched me. This was so awkward. I needed to break the silence. So, I tightened the strap of my backpack and tentatively greeted Meng Yao. Hello, Meng Yao. A flicker of frustration passed through her eyes. Her voice was very low, mumbling something to herself. I listened carefully, finally hearing what she was saying. It's over, really over. Everything is ruined. I stood frozen at the door, not daring to move. Meng Yao immediately resumed her usual cold demeanor, silently walking out the door, but her ears were slightly flushed. As she passed the girl, Meng Yao raised her foot and knocked her to the ground. Talking too much, huh? Think you're so capable? You've ruined everything for me. The girl rubbed her sore backside. Meng Yao, I was just helping you. You've been shrinking in front of him for 2 years. Meng Yao didn't say a word. She didn't even dare to look at me. and nearly fled the scene. By the time I finished drawing the display board and got home, that night as I lay in bed, I slowly realized. It turns out my deskmate, Meng Yao, wasn't really cold at all. She had been pretending for 2 years. But why did she suppress herself like that? Could it be that she really likes me? After all, we seem to come from completely different worlds. The people in the classroom today were all known to be the troublemakers that no teacher could control. But they listened to Meng Yao without question. I got up and leaned over the balcony. The stars were especially bright tonight. I stared at the sky in a daze, and couldn't help but think back to the first time I saw Meng Yao. It was the first day of the 10th grade, moving from middle school to high school. Everything felt brand new. I walked into class 3, stopping at a seat by the window. I chose the seat on the outside. After tidying up, I even cleaned the desk inside by the window. That was for Gu Wuyin, who was also in class 3. Just as I finished wiping, a shadow fell over me. I looked up and saw a sweaty, chubby classmate. I was about to say that someone was sitting next to me, but he threw his bag onto the desk inside. I frowned, politely explaining to him. But the chubby classmate didn't listen at all. With a fierce expression, he told me to move. He said he was going to sit there. He was large, covered in sweat. I couldn't get a complete sentence out. My whole face turned red. I was afraid he'd slap me to the ground, but I also didn't want him to be my deskmate. So, despite my legs trembling, I stood my ground and didn't let him take the seat. The chubby classmate questioned me why I wasn't moving. I quietly said, "Classmate, there's no room." Seeing the chubby classmate's face growing darker, I immediately regretted it. I felt like I must have hurt his pride. Just when I didn't know what to do, Meng Yao appeared. While the chubby classmate and I were at a standstill, she coldly walked over. With that breathtakingly beautiful face, her long fingers gently moved, and with a sharp sound, the chubby classmate's backpack was thrown to the ground. Her cold voice rang out, "I'll take the seat inside." "Move aside." The whole class's attention immediately shifted to us. It was then I realized she must be quite famous. I thought the chubby classmate would argue with her. But to my surprise, Meng Yao didn't even pay him any mind. She simply shot him a warning glance. Her eyes showed no emotion at all. "What's wrong? You have a problem?" The chubby classmate, terrified, didn't dare say a word and quickly slinked away. Meng Yao's gaze landed on me. I froze for a moment, then stepped aside. I watched her walk in and sit down. The pressure she radiated was so intense. It made her seem even more imposing than the chubby classmate. "Lin Bei, don't be scared. This will be your deskmate from now on. Don't worry, she won't kill you with a single punch." I hesitated for quite a while before carefully extending my hand towards Meng Yao. "Hello, I'm Lin Bei." Meng Yao didn't look up. She just took out a thick physics book and started reading. Just when I thought she wouldn't acknowledge me, her cold voice came again. "Meng Yao." I quietly wiped my sweat off, thinking to myself, "Help, she's way too cold." Later, I found out she was the infamous citywide #1 in the high school entrance exams, Meng Yao. Miancheng No. 1 High School is the best school in Miancheng, and its students are either wealthy and influential, or exceptionally talented. I belong to the latter group. My family is average. My dad works in a factory. My mom takes care of the house. I've always wanted to give my parents a better life, so I work extra hard at my studies. I can't afford to slack off. When I got into Miancheng No. 1 High, my parents were so happy they almost set off fireworks. They kept saying I was doing well and were thinking about buying me new clothes, fearing I'd be looked down upon by my classmates. I smiled and told them not to worry. Gu Wuyin had already given me many almost new clothes. I'll just wear those. And if you really want new clothes, then buy them for yourselves. They haven't gotten any new clothes in a long time. My parents, upon hearing this, were moved to tears. Our son is so thoughtful. The tuition fees at Myeongchang No. One high school are expensive, but luckily I excelled academically and earned a scholarship that covered all the tuition. The school is full of talented students. Everyone's grades are outstanding. And the level is completely different from my middle school. The school divides classes based on grades. I'm in class 3. Class 2 is full of overachievers. Class 1 is the best of the best. I've always wondered, how does Meng Yao manage to easily get the top spot in every exam? It seems like she's just taking it casually. How could she be in class 3? Logically, she should be in class 1. Since that awkward encounter, Meng Yao hasn't come to school for 3 days. These 3 days, I felt unusually uncomfortable, even though I'm always careful around her, fearing I might offend her. Without her around, I feel like something is missing. Whenever she's there, my thermos is always full. She always refills it when I'm not looking, even when it's nearly empty, even though she's cold, and no one dares to speak to her. Whenever I run into trouble, all I have to do is furrow my brow, and she take my book to help me. Meng Yao's hands are beautiful. When she explains things to me, I often find myself staring at her hands. She would then lift her hand and gently pat the back of my head. Her tone was still as indifferent as ever. Snap out of it. Her hair is long. And whenever she talks to me, she would habitually tuck her hair behind her ear. Looking at her face, which seemed cold and indifferent, I would occasionally see a softer side of her. It was only then that I realized I was always so afraid of her. But now that she's gone, all I can think of are her good qualities. It's been 3 days since Meng Yao hasn't come. Is she avoiding me? The way she rushed out that day was too funny. She must have felt embarrassed. Does she not want to be my deskmate anymore? I sighed. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone back to the classroom to draw the draft that day. It wouldn't have been this awkward. As it turns out, I was overthinking things. On the 4th day, Meng Yao came back. It turns out she had been participating in the national physics competition for the past 3 days and came back with a championship title. I breathed a huge sigh of relief. Thankfully, she wasn't avoiding me. But after she returned, I had changed seats. Gu Wuyan had fractured his bone when he called me, crying his heart out. He was crying so pitifully. Lin Bei, I don't want to live anymore. I hurriedly asked what happened. He said intermittently, I slipped in the shower. My leg is broken. Why am I so unlucky? Even the birds always poop on my head. I can tolerate all that. But how is it that I had a fever, then just got better, and now my leg is broken? Just when I thought I'd be able to go back to school ... And now this happens. All the homework will pile up so much. I asked, worried, did they put your leg in a cast? Does it still hurt? They put a cast on. It doesn't hurt anymore. It's just inconvenient to move around. It's fine. Come to school. I'll go with you. I'll take care of you if anything happens. Do you think the boss will let you change seats? You've been deskmates for 2 years. It's fine. Meng Yao hasn't been here these days. I'll talk to the teacher tomorrow. Anyway, I don't have a deskmate now. On the other end of the phone, I could hear Gu Wuyan blowing his nose. Lin Bei, you're really the best. So, the next day, Meng Yao came back. What she saw was an empty seat, and I was sitting at the other end of the classroom. Our gazes met. She didn't say anything, just stared at me with a gloomy look. Her eyes seemed to be hiding an endless darkness. If it wasn't my imagination, I think I saw a hint of murderous intent in her eyes. Gu Wuyan, sitting next to me, uncontrollably shuddered. Lin Bei, with that look. I feel like she wants to kill me. I patted his back and comforted him. How could that be? You must have seen it wrong. In the following week, I got along very well with Gu Wuyan, but Meng Yao's gaze became more and more resentful. One time, when Gu Wuyan and I went to get hot water, she seemed to have completely let go of herself now. Everyone was surprised that Meng Yao was mingling with this group of troublemakers, and it seemed like these students were quite afraid of her. A big shot is still a big shot. Her aura is different. Meng Yao walked in the front, and we bumped into each other. Our gazes met. I hurriedly shifted my gaze away. I don't know why, but my heart started beating faster. And it seemed like Meng Yao had become even more beautiful. Her eyes were deep, and just as we brushed past each other, she grabbed my hand. "Lin Bei, are you afraid of me?" Her voice was very low. I froze for a moment. "Not afraid." Meng Yao sized me up. "Not afraid? Then why are you avoiding me?" I forced a smile. "Maybe it's just a habit. I really am not afraid of you." Meng Yao raised an eyebrow. "Then why did you change seats?" I nervously explained with a silly smile. "It's not that. It's because Gu Wuyan broke his right leg. I have to take care of him." Meng Yao looked at me and softly asked, "When will his leg be better? When will you move back?" So she wanted me to return. I felt a small happiness in my heart. Even without realizing it, I said seriously, "Gu Wuyan's leg isn't better yet." Meng Yao let go of my hand. Her eyes filled with resentment. "Is he your only friend?" Gu Wuyan, listening nearby, wanted to argue but didn't dare. I whispered, "No, but we're the best of friends." Meng Yao's brown eyes reflected my image. She nervously ran a hand through her hair. She shot Gu Wuyan a warning glance. Her tone was a bit harsh. "When will your broken foot heal?" Gu Wuyan, terrified, quickly grabbed me. "Don't worry, big shot. It'll be soon. Yao sighed helplessly. She leaned slightly toward me, her eyes seemingly focused only on me. I nervously asked, "Meng Yao, what's wrong?" Meng Yao noticed my nervousness and gave a mischievous smile. "Deskmates. When he's better, you'll move back. Got it?" I looked into her eyes, nodded slightly. "Got it." A month later, Gu Wuyan got his cast removed. Meng Yao came to personally help me move my seat. She walked over with a cool expression, and in the eyes of everyone's surprised gazes, without a word, she moved my things back to their original place. She arranged everything neatly. I grabbed the sleeve of her shirt, smiling as I said, "Thank you, Meng Yao." Meng Yao awkwardly turned her head away, continuing to focus on problems I couldn't understand. After a long while, she awkwardly said, "It's fine as long as you're back." Between Meng Yao and me, it seemed like things had changed, but at the same time, they hadn't. She still acted cold and distant. The Meng Yao who had arrogantly boasted about me in the classroom seemed like just a dream. Now, she refuses to acknowledge that day's events. And now, whenever I look up, I always catch a glimpse of her somewhat flustered gaze. Her ears also always seem to turn inexplicably red. If the other students saw her like this, no one would believe she's the same cold Meng Yao. I still don't dare to talk to her much. She's always busy writing something on the board. Once, I accidentally saw her notebook with the words Lin Bei's observation journal written on it. Is this her diary? She writes a diary? I could hardly believe it. I had never imagined that one day I would meet Meng Yao's parents. Meng Yao's parents are the heads of a major corporation. Their status and position are extremely high. I vaguely heard from classmates who had met them that Meng Yao's parents are very serious, with a powerful presence, which makes people feel an overwhelming pressure. After all, they manage such a huge corporation. It's not surprising that they have this kind of aura. I thought someone like me, an ordinary person, would never have the chance to meet them. But to my surprise, they appeared at such a timely moment. During those days, I was absent-minded in class because my dad had been laid off from the factory. He shouldn't have been fired. He'd worked at the factory for 20 years. He was an old employee. It was all because our family had offended the wrong people. Our house is in an old, picturesque alley, which would be perfect for opening a shop. A well-known boss in the alley had taken an interest in our house. wanting to buy it at an extremely low price. One day, a middle-aged woman and her husband drove up, swaggering and stopping right in front of our house. A man dressed in mink fur got out of the car, looking at us with a face full of disdain. "You are the homeowners? Look at this shabby place. Hurry up and move out. We're buying this house. You're wasting space living here." This man was the husband of that boss. My parents knew they couldn't afford to offend them, so they could only politely refuse. "Sir, we're really sorry. If we leave, we don't even know where to go. Could you give us time to find another place to live? And then we can sell the house to you. Please let us stay for another year." The middle-aged man's expression immediately turned angry. "I don't have time to wait. Hurry up and get out." My mom frowned, arguing with him. "How can you be so unreasonable? This house is ours. When to sell and whether to sell it, it's up to us to decide. Who has the right to force us to sell?" The man gave my dad a contemptuous glance and sneered, "With your poor, shabby looks, you think you deserve to live in such a nice house? This alley has a bright future ahead. I heard it's going to be developed by a big company. You don't deserve to live here." I couldn't take it anymore, and loudly said, "Uncle, please get this straight. This is our home." The middle-aged man's face darkened. "You still dare to call me uncle? You won't sell, huh? Fine. Don't regret it when the time comes and you're the ones begging me," he said, and left in a huff. A few days later, Dad was laid off. He'd worked at that factory for 20 years, only because that boss was a friend of the plant manager. One word from him, and my dad had to pack up and leave. But this was our family's only source of income. Dad seemed to age overnight, but when he saw me, he still forced a smile. He patted my head and said, "Don't worry, Dad will figure something out. You just focus on your studies." There was a sharp sound as the pen lightly tapped on my head. I snapped back to reality, and the first thing I saw was Meng Yao's beautiful face. With a hint of determination in her features, Meng Yao raised an eyebrow, resting her chin on her hand, staring intently at me. "Lin Bei, your state these days isn't right." I didn't dare to meet her eyes, and quickly lowered my head, pretending to look at the problems. "It's nothing." Meng Yao squinted slightly, examining me with interest. "You're hiding something from me." "No! How could I have something to hide from you?" Meng Yao didn't ask further, but her eyes darkened slightly. She said, "I hope there's nothing." I thought the matter would just pass, but unexpectedly Meng Yao came to my house. That couple returned, this time with the factory manager who had fired my dad. Dad still greeted them politely, but they acted so condescending, mocking my dad at every turn. Dad had to keep bending over backward, tolerating it for the sake of survival. I was filled with resentment. I had always wanted to give my parents a better life, but now, facing this situation, I felt powerless. I clenched my fists, struggling to stay calm. Just when I was about to lose control, someone grabbed my collar. I looked up, and it was Meng Yao. She wore a faint, almost imperceptible smile. With a slight sneer, she said, "Lin Bei, you've grown bold. You dare hide something this big from me?" The middle-aged man, while cracking sunflower seeds, tossed the shells carelessly onto the floor. He kept criticizing my parents. The boss who wanted to buy our house was also adding fuel to the fire. She sat on the bench. She leisurely sipped her tea. With a smug look, she said, "If you had sold the house to us earlier, this wouldn't have happened. I gave you the opportunity. It's your fault for not recognizing it." Before she could finish, Meng Yao kicked her, knocking her to the ground. The boss was stunned and shouted, "Who are you?" The middle-aged man rushed over to help the boss up and shouted angrily, "You dare kick my wife? You're dead now." This was really the end. Meng Yao stood with her hands in her pockets, her voice as cold as if it could freeze someone. I know you're desperate, but please wait. Within 10 minutes, a row of luxury cars pulled up in front of my house. As the cars came to a stop, a man and a woman got out. The man was elegant, the woman graceful and dignified. They were both extremely good-looking. Before they could even approach, the woman took off her sunglasses and loudly shouted, "Who's so bold to bully my Lin Bei? Do they have a death wish?" As she walked past me, she took a few steps back, grabbed my hand, and said with a face full of compassion, "This is our Lin Bei, right? Oh my! And Song finally got to see you. You look so well-behaved. I've read about you in the observation journal." Meng Yao cleared her throat, reminding her, "Mom, we need to focus on the main issue." And Song slapped her forehead. "Right, Lin Bei, don't worry, and Song will stand up for you." With that, she briskly walked toward my parents, who were standing to the side, unsure of what to do. I quietly asked Meng Yao, "Who are they?" A slight unease flashed in Meng Yao's eyes, and she whispered, "My parents." But Meng Yao's parents gave me a completely different impression than what I had heard before. And Song excitedly took my parents' hands, saying, "Hello, in-laws." Wait, I mean the parents of my daughter's deskmate. "Hello!" Dad was startled by the sudden warmth, and he responded blankly, "Hello, hello." Song patted Dad's hand, saying, "I'll take care of this situation. I'll solve it." With that, she quickly pulled Mom behind her, and her expression instantly became serious. She radiated the aura of someone to be revered, pressing down on everyone in the room. It was almost hard to breathe. The middle-aged man, seeing this, gulped nervously. He never expected the chairman of the Meng Group would come to support us. After all, the redevelopment of this old alley was being handled by the big company is the Meng Group. Almost all the businesses in Myeongchang are controlled by the Meng Group. The couple who had been so arrogant just a moment ago now looked terrified and guilty. They quickly said, "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding." The factory manager quickly pushed the couple aside, and with a forced smile, looked at Ansong and Uncle Meng. He flattered them. "President Meng, President Song, it's really a misunderstanding. They weren't forcing the sale. They just wanted to buy the house." And Song didn't even look at him, coldly replying, "Who do you think you are? What's your status? And what's mine? How dare you speak to me? You're the one who fired our Lin Bei's father." The factory manager, panic-stricken, nodded and bowed, explaining, No, it's a misunderstanding. I didn't fire him. He'll be back at work tomorrow." And Song leisurely fixed her hair. And then, an assistant-like person handed her a document, and Song flipped through the document and casually said to the factory manager, "Lin Bei's dad will definitely go to work tomorrow. But you don't need to. You've been fired. This factory has been acquired by us." With that, she turned around, patted my mom's shoulder, and handed the document to my dad. With a look of triumph, she said, "Lin Bei's dad, tomorrow you'll take the position of factory manager." Dad stood frozen, taking the document, unable to believe his ears. For so many years, he had the technical skills to be the manager, but because he had no connections, he was always suppressed. The dream he had struggled for most of his life to achieve had never come true. Now it was effortlessly realized. And Song then looked at the middle-aged couple and said, "Don't get too smug. I've heard you own a pig farm. Tomorrow, I'll send someone with an excavator to level it." The three people who had been swaggering just moments ago now looked utterly defeated. Sitting on the ground, helpless, the middle-aged man was about to cry out. But with just a glance from Ansong, a bodyguard stepped forward to cover his mouth, and they were forcibly escorted out. I looked at Ansong with admiration, my eyes sparkling with awe. I sincerely said, "Aunt, You're amazing! After everything was settled, my parents were extremely grateful and invited Song and Uncle N to stay for dinner. They didn't refuse and immediately called to cancel their engagements for the day. They gladly took a seat, and Song gently stroked my hair and asked, "Lin Bei, your name is really cultural. Who gave it to you? It really suits you." I answered seriously, "My grandmother gave it to me. She never went to school." "Why did your grandmother give you the name?" "Dad told me that. When I was born, Grandma carried a basket and brought along the hen that was laying eggs. She walked all the way from the countryside to the city. It takes more than 2 hours by car. She just walked step by step." Back then, our family was really poor, and we didn't have a mobile phone. Grandma didn't know which hospital we were in, and couldn't find her way around the big city. She went from hospital to hospital asking. She'd been working on the farm for years. Her back was bent, but she still insisted on finding us. She just wanted to see me once. Mom told Grandma to name me. Grandma thought for a long time and said to name me Lin Bei. She said I was a one-of-a-kind treasure in this world. This was the first time I'd told these stories in front of others. Meng Yao listened intently. Uncle Meng, who had been silent the whole time, was moved, his eyes reddening, and Song couldn't help but wipe away a tear, saying, "That's so touching." Then, she gave Meng Yao a disdainful look and said, "Now, Lin Bei's family loves him so much. Do you think someone like you could get him?" After hearing that, Meng Yao lowered her head in silence. Recently, the school was holding a math competition. The first place winner would represent the school in the provincial math competition. If I could do well, it would be a big highlight on my resume. Meng Yao didn't participate in this competition since she had other competitions to attend, but I silently worked hard and unexpectedly won first place. When everyone found out that the person representing the school was someone like me who wasn't very noticeable, they all doubted me. They said I only got lucky this time, and I just embarrassed myself at the provincial competition. I'd be better off letting someone more capable take the opportunity and bring glory to the school. There were so many negative voices. Even I started to doubt myself. Maybe I really was just lucky. But what about the days and nights I spent studying? What did that count for? Meng Yao placed a stack of books on my desk, bent down and met my gaze. Her breath gently brushed against my ear. She asked, "Are you scared?" I looked at her. The words I spoke were filled with a hint of grievance. "They all say I'm not good enough." Meng Yao's lips curved into a smile. There was a mischievous glint in her eyes, but her tone was firm, which instantly reassured me. "Don't be afraid. It's just an exam. It won't be like that. Let me teach you. Go and bring home a first place. Let them see." Meng Yao spoke casually, as if she was sure I could do it. After a while, I looked into her eyes and nodded solemnly. So, I began doing what I was best at, studying hard, and Meng Yao became my personal tutor. During this time, the school organized a badminton competition to relieve students' stress. Meng Yao represented our class in the competition. Her beautiful face already attracted the attention of countless boys. This time, she became the center of attention. The number of people cheering for her was countless. Meng Yao, who was usually cold and aloof, I stood in the crowd, holding a bottle of water in my hand, quietly watching her. When Meng Yao's gaze swept over to me, the usually distant and cold girl actually smiled light and carefree. It was like a peacock spreading its feathers. This made the boys cheer even louder. As soon as the match started, Meng Yao launched a fierce attack. The opposing team could barely defend. I stood in the crowd, unable to help but admire. She's truly multi-talented. As the match progressed, during the halftime break, many people came to bring Meng Yao water, but she rejected them one by one. I stood on the outskirts, hurriedly unscrewing my water bottle, and walked toward her. But before I could get close, breathing heavily, she said tiredly, "Thanks, classmate. This water came just in time." I was going to explain that the water wasn't meant for her, but seeing her tired expression, I swallowed my words. Just as I looked up, I met Meng Yao's gaze, which held a trace of displeasure. I hadn't even had time to explain when the match began again. In the second half, Meng Yao seemed like a different person. She played aggressively and fiercely, almost intercepting every ball. She completely dominated the match. The people watching could feel the anger emanating from her. It wasn't just the opponents who were surprised. Even her teammates were left in shock. What's going on with Meng Yao? Why is she suddenly playing so hard? Is she trying to kill herself? Another teammate wiped his sweat away, saying, "Who knows? Meng Yao is always so cold and distant. Who knows what's going on in her mind? She doesn't like talking, and we don't dare to ask." In the end, Meng Yao won the competition with overwhelming strength, without any doubt. After the competition ended, and as the crowd gradually dispersed, I walked over to Meng Yao. "Meng Yao!" I called her softly. Meng Yao had her hands in her pockets, her tone carrying a hint of playfulness. "What's up? You little ungrateful person, giving water to others, but not to me. Meng Yao, you want me to look at you? If you want me to, then I'll look." I looked at her with a smile, confidently saying, "You'll see." Meng Yao mumbled softly, "Don't look at me like that." But then she obediently lifted her head. "Seriously, you're something else." I took out a tissue and gently wiped the sweat from her forehead. I leaned closer to her ear and said seriously, "Meng Yao, you were amazing today. You really are my deskmate." My eyes were shining with admiration. After hearing this, Meng Yao quickly stepped back a little, her ears turning slightly red. I didn't want her to feel embarrassed and was about to leave. But Meng Yao grabbed the corner of my shirt. Her tone was a bit awkward. "If you're going to compliment me, then say a little more. More people are saying sarcastic things about me. In their eyes, I'm just too ordinary. They think I'm not worthy of representing the school in such an important competition. They're sure I won't make it." The day before the competition was a Monday. The school held a national flag ceremony. Meng Yao, as the top student, stood on the stage. The originally noisy playground instantly fell silent. Everyone was very surprised, especially since she had always refused to speak in public. But this time, she had taken the initiative to stand up. Meng Yao was famous for being cold and distant, and it was a rare opportunity to hear her speak. Everyone was listening intently. Even the principal looked pleased and expectant. The focus of the crowd gradually sharpened as Meng Yao lightly tapped the microphone. She said, "Since everyone is here, I'll say a few words. I read something in a book. The outside world is full of wind and rain, and today is everywhere. So Lin Bei." Meng Yao paused for a few seconds. I stood below the stage. Suddenly hearing my name, my heart skipped a few beats. I stood among the crowd, and our gazes met across the stage. Meng Yao's lips curled into a slight smile, and her eyes were filled with confidence. "Regardless of what others say about you, you just have to believe in what you think is right. Just go for it. Life is short, but there are many critical moments. I hope you can give it your all at this flourishing age and have no regrets. As for me, didn't everyone say I'm on top of the world? But I'm willing to lower myself for you forever." With that, Meng Yao looked around the room. Her tone was calm as she said, "I apologize for taking up your time. Actually, there's nothing else. I just want to cheer for my little deskmate. If others don't believe in you, I believe in you. Lin Bei, don't be nervous for the competition. You've already worked hard enough. I've taught you everything I can." With that, Meng Yao set down the microphone. Under the astonished gazes of the teachers, she walked off the stage with one hand in her pocket. The room fell silent for a moment. Someone suddenly shouted, "Whoa! Meng Yao is amazing." The students quickly reacted, and the cheers and whistles started echoing. Whoa! Did the big shot just confess? That was so sweet. Is this the cold, indifferent Meng Yao? She openly showed affection in front of the principal. Lin Bei, that's the one participating in the math competition, right? He must be really impressive. Otherwise, why would the big shot think so highly of him? As a listener, I felt so honored. Wow! I thought it was going to be a serious speech, that we'd learn a lot of knowledge, but the big shot really does things her own way. I stood in the middle of the students, dazed, holding my chest. My heart pounding so fast it felt like it might jump out of my throat. All around me, there were cheers from the students, but it felt like I could only hear my own heart pounding. I was done for. I think I've really fallen in love. Oh my god, I've really fallen for Meng Yao. That night, I packed my bag, sat alone on the balcony, letting the cold wind blow, lost in thought. After a long hesitation, I finally dialed the number. Little deskmate. On the other end, Meng Yao's voice, filled with amusement, came through. It was different from her usual friendly tone, and now there was a hint of tenderness. I softly called out to her, Meng Yao, I'm here. Meng Yao. I've made a very important decision. Her voice sounded a little heavy, but she patiently responded. Tell me then. I took a deep breath and said firmly, if I get first place this time, I'll confess to you. The line went silent. For a moment, Meng Yao didn't speak. I waited in anticipation. Suddenly, a sharp sound came from the other end of the phone. Meng Yao cursed softly. I quickly asked, Meng Yao, what's wrong? Her tone carried a hint of grievance. It's nothing. I'm just so happy. I was peeling some cactus fruit, and I accidentally pricked myself on a cactus. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Smiling, I asked, do you really believe in me so much? What if I don't get first place? Meng Yao, without hesitation, replied, Deskmate, you're my student. Be confident. You'll definitely get first place. Through the phone, I could feel her overwhelming confidence. Without realizing it, I was being affected by her. She always had this magical power, making me feel strong and capable. All right, I'll definitely bring home first place. Later, I really ended up with Meng Yao, and I also made sure to win first place. I used my strength to silence those who looked down on me, and Song fed me strawberries, with a proud smile on her face, saying, Our Lin Bei is really impressive. His first time in a provincial competition, and he got first place. Here, have another strawberry. I shyly opened my mouth to take it. Dad, who was massaging nearby, also laughed and said, Meng Yao taught him well. That's why Lin Bei has made such great progress. And Meng Yao, standing beside us, would occasionally giggle. Ever since we got together, she often acted this way. That day, Meng Yao looked into my eyes, her gaze full of affection. She tried to suppress the excitement in her heart and asked me, Lin Bei, now that we're together, you'd better not think about breaking up. I get jealous and I have a small temper. Are you still willing to stay with me? I looked into her eyes and nodded firmly. Meng Yao, I like you. Meng Yao, excited, spun around on the spot and then tightly hugged me. She didn't care about the surprised looks from the people around us at the airport. Like a child, she kept rubbing her face against my neck and murmured, Marry me. I smiled and replied, Don't rush. We still have plenty of time. From that day on, Meng Yao seemed to have changed into a completely different person. She would occasionally smile foolishly. The classmates at school didn't understand. They all started gossiping that Meng Yao was driven crazy by the pressure of her studies. They were all discussing how it was just one exam, and it wasn't worth stressing out the big shot like that. However, the days to the competition kept drawing closer. For all the students, it was a hurdle that everyone had to overcome. It wasn't the end, but a whole new beginning. Everyone was giving it their all, sprinting with all their might. I was no exception. To help me catch up on my studies, Meng Yao would accompany me every afternoon, staying with me until the classroom doors were about to close. Fortunately, I performed exceptionally well in the exam. Although Meng Yao and I didn't end up at the same school, I did get into a pretty good top university, and we still stayed in the same city. On the first day of university, Meng Yao drove her flashy sports car to drop me off at school. She made sure to circle around the school gate several times, wanting to announce to the world that she was my girlfriend. If it weren't for the dormitory supervisor, she probably would have dragged me into the boys' dorm. She would have even made my bed for me. But we didn't make it in. Meng Yao looked displeased, grumbling, "What a crappy school. They don't even let me into the boys' dorm." Time passed in the blink of an eye. The 4 years of university flew by like a fleeting moment. Meng Yao and I were always by each other's side. After graduation, we stepped into society, shining in our respective fields. A few years later, we walked hand in hand into the Civil Affairs Bureau and got our marriage certificate. At 27, Meng Yao had firmly established herself in her field, becoming an irreplaceable figure. In the company's top-floor conference room, Meng Yao sat at the head of the table, her fingers casually tapping on the surface. Her expression was lazy. However, the high-ranking executives in the room were on edge. Sweat was pouring down their foreheads, and they didn't dare make a sound. They all knew. This was the precursor to President N's anger. Gu Wuyan's wife was also among them. She secretly texted Gu Wuyan asking for help, and I happened to be with him at the time. Seeing the pitiful look in Gu Wuyan's eyes, I understood immediately. I pulled out my phone and dialed Meng Yao's number. In an instant, the one silent room where even a pin drop could be heard was suddenly filled with the sound of my ringtone. The executives, hearing the ringtone, felt like they were saved. They were all too familiar with that ringtone. It meant the savior had arrived. Meng Yao's eyes fell on the name flashing on her phone screen. She had saved my contact as Q Ghost. She picked up the phone, stood up, and lightly pressed the button to answer. "Darling, come pick me up. I want to go home." In that moment, the sharpness and coldness in Meng Yao's eyes disappeared. In their place was endless tenderness. She slightly curled the corners of her lips. She said seriously, "Okay, stay right where you are and don't move." In my free time, I would flip through old photos from high school. My thoughts would inevitably linger on the time just before the college entrance exam. On an ordinary afternoon, the sunset descended. The last rays of the sun filtered through the window, spilling into the classroom. The classroom was exceptionally quiet, with only the sound of my pen scraping across the paper as I solved problems. Meng Yao sat quietly beside me, reading. She lazily leaned against her desk chair, one hand holding the book, while the other casually rested on the back of my chair. Occasionally, she would tap it gently. I stopped writing, stretched, and absent-mindedly poked my cheek with the pen. I softly called, "Meng Yao." Meng Yao patiently responded, "What's up? Do you know the meaning of the hibiscus flower?" Before she could answer, I continued speaking to myself. "It means gentle persistence," Meng Yao softly said. "I know." With that, she gently kissed the corner of my mouth. She lifted her hand and gently massaged my neck. I smiled, looking at Meng Yao, letting her relax me. Behind her was the golden glow of the setting sun, making her seem incredibly gentle. Meng Yao. Actually, I want to say, the hibiscus flower blooms in the morning and falls in the evening. But every time it withers, it's to prepare for the next, even more splendid bloom. The seasons change, and it lives on. So its meaning is gentle persistence. And my feelings for you are the same. Epilogue. On the first day of school at Myeonchang No. 1 High, the road at the school gate was filled with cars dropping off students. In the crowd, 2 girls stood out. Meng Yao, why are you here for high school? The high school lessons. Didn't you finish them all in elementary school? Meng Yao carried her bag with one hand, chewing gum, her gaze sweeping over the students arriving to check in. She said, "I'm just here for a few days. I'll casually get first place. Then I'll deal with my family and won't come back. Letting me finish high school properly? That's impossible. It's a complete waste of my time." I knew it. High school knowledge is like nothing to you, Meng Yao. You're not foolish. How could you just obediently spend 3 years in high school? They said as they passed through the corridor. As they passed by the door of class 3, Meng Yao suddenly stopped in her tracks. By the window in class 3, a boy was standing there looking dazed. The desk near the window had already been tidied up neatly, and it was clear that he intended to sit there. At that moment, the boy was looking up, talking to a fierce-looking, overweight boy. The overweight boy threw his backpack heavily onto the seat inside and arrogantly said, "Do you know who I am? How dare you refuse me? Being able to sit next to me is your privilege." The boy stood there for a long while, unable to say a word. But his attitude was resolute. He stood firm, not letting the other boy take the seat. The overweight boy wiped the greasy sweat off his face and asked, "Why won't you let me sit?" The boy answered quietly, "It'll be crowded. There's no space." Meng Yao, who had been standing at the door of class 3, was now frozen, her eyes fixed on the boy. Her mind was filled with one thought. Such a good boy. This boy is really well behaved. No, I have to attend this high school. Thinking this, her feet moved uncontrollably toward class 3. She walked in, and with a swift flick of her long fingers, she snatched the seat. With a sharp sound, Meng Yao, with a cold expression, said, "I'm taking this seat. Move." The overweight boy looked annoyed. "Are you kidding me? I was here first. Who are you?" Meng Yao glanced at him indifferently and coldly said, "Do you have a problem?" The overweight boy, seeing who it was, instantly froze and quickly said, No problem." After the overweight boy left, Meng Yao confidently walked in and sat down. The boy stood to the side, hesitating for a while, before cautiously extending his hand to Meng Yao. His voice carried a trace of nervousness. "Hello, I'm Lin Bei." Meng Yao didn't take his hand, but instead took out a thick physics book from her bag. Without changing her expression, she said, "Meng Yao." The girl who came with Meng Yao was stunned by her actions and stood rooted to the spot. She had just intended to enter the classroom, but a single look from Meng Yao made her retreat. Her foot, which had already stepped forward, froze and retreated. She quickly took out her phone and texted Meng Yao. "Meng Yao, please come out. You've entered the wrong classroom. You're a student of class 1. You don't belong here. Come out quickly." Meng Yao only replied with 2 words, "Get lost." The girl texted again, "Meng Yao, what's wrong?" Meng Yao calmly replied,